Dean Martin, the smooth crooner with a mob secret. Or was he? Yes, Dean Martin was the smoothest man in show business. The tilted cigarette, the drink in hand, that lazy grin, like nothing ever bothered him. But behind that cool charm, there was a story no one could quite explain. A rumor that followed him for decades, but that he was connected to the Mafia. The whispers were everywhere, in dressing rooms, on talk shows, in late-night lounges in Vegas. His friends had ties. His fans included mob bosses. And yet, Dean never said a word about it, never confirmed it, never denied it. And that silence? It only made the legend grow. Was it fear, loyalty, or something more calculated? Because while Frank Sinatra fought the press and tried to outrun the stories, Dean just stood there, smiling, saying nothing. So why didn't Dean Martin ever correct the Mafia rumors? What did he know that the others didn't? To understand that, we have to go back to the smoky clubs, to the high-stakes casinos, and to a time when being too close to the truth could get you hurt. And maybe the real mystery isn't whether Dean Martin was connected to the mob, but why we still want to believe he was. Before the mob rumors, before Vegas, before the Rat Pack, Dean Martin was just Dino Crocetti from Steubenville, Ohio. The son of Italian immigrants, he spoke only Italian until he was 5. He dropped out of school in 10th grade, boxed under the name Kid Crochet, and worked in speakeasies during Prohibition. By the time he found his way to show business, Dean already knew how to survive without asking too many questions. But survival didn't just make him smart, it made him cool. He wasn't the flashiest, he wasn't the loudest. He was the guy who never tried too hard and never seemed to care. That's what made him magnetic. In the 1940s, he teamed up with Jerry Lewis and became a sensation. But when that ended, Dean reinvented himself as a solo singer, an actor, and eventually the comm center of the Rat Pack. While Sinatra stormed through hotel lobbies and Sammy Davis Jr. lit up rooms, Dean just leaned back in his chair, drink in hand, smirking like he already knew how the night was going to end. That relaxed persona? It wasn't an act. Or maybe it was. That's the thing with Dean Martin. You could never quite tell where the real man ended and the myth began. And that mystery would become his greatest defense. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of Las Vegas, and the shadows were just as big as the lights. Back then, Vegas wasn't just glitz and glamour. It was controlled, run by men who didn't appear on marquees or magazine covers. The mob had their hands in the casinos, the clubs, the money, the unions, and everyone knew it. And right at the center of it all was the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra's mob ties were well documented. He was photographed with known Mafia figures. He publicly supported people with deep connections. He got angry when the press brought it up. He fought the rumors, sued over them, and tried to control the narrative. Dean? He didn't say a word. That silence made him seem different, less reactive, and maybe more believable. There's no doubt that the mob loved Dean Martin, not just as a performer, but as an icon. They booked him constantly. His records were played in their clubs. Real mobsters quoted his lines, wore suits like his, and saw him as one of their own. But unlike Sinatra, Dean never got political, never shouted, never picked sides. He'd show up, perform, charm the room, and leave. No drama, no noise. Even in interviews, when reporters asked about mobsters attending his shows, Dean would just laugh it off, or give one of those vague, throwaway answers that somehow made the question disappear. He was close enough to the fire to feel the heat, but somehow he never got burned. And in a city like Vegas, in an era like that, that was a skill not many had. The strange thing about Dean Martin's alleged mob ties is that they weren't whispered behind closed doors. They were right out in the open. People joked about it on talk shows. Comics made references in roasts. Journalists asked questions, some polite, some not so much. In a 1960s TV interview, a reporter asked Dean directly about his dangerous fans. Dean just smiled and replied, "I got no problems with them. They tip well." And that was it. That was the playbook. Never confirm, never deny. Let them laugh and keep the story alive. The more he didn't answer, the more mysterious he became. And in show business, mystery is currency. He didn't need bodyguards. He didn't get caught in scandals. He seemed untouchable, like someone you didn't mess with, even if he never gave you a reason to fear him. And whether or not Dean was actually connected didn't matter anymore, because the idea that he might be was enough. That might gave him power, respect, and in some circles, protection. People around him started leaning into it. Writers dropped Mafia references in reviews. Studio executives gave him more space. And when a young, up-and-coming comedian once made a crass joke about Dean's friends, that comedian was suddenly pulled aside and told, "You don't joke about Martin." Not like that. Dean didn't ask for that kind of respect, but he didn't reject it either. Over time, his image evolved. Not just the charming singer or the boozy crooner, but someone with real weight behind the smile. A man who maybe had quiet backing from powerful places. And the best part? He never had to lift a finger. Just a smirk, a shrug, a joke that didn't quite answer the question. And the myth kept growing, one unanswered rumor at a time. Here's the question that no one could ever answer. Maybe not even Dean himself. Was he actually connected? Not just friendly with mobsters, not just on stage in their casinos, but involved, protected, in the circle. If you look at the FBI files from the era, Dean Martin's name doesn't appear the way Sinatra's does. He wasn't being investigated. He wasn't being followed. He kept a lower profile in every sense. But people inside the business, the musicians, the promoters, the club owners, they talked. Quietly. They said Dean knew who was in charge. He knew who really ran Vegas. And he knew how to move without crossing any lines. Some say that was just street smarts. He'd grown up in working-class neighborhoods, played seedy clubs, kept his head down. Others believed it was intentional, that Dean played the long game better than anyone. There's a story that's been told over and over. A well-known mob figure walked into the sands during one of Dean's shows. Dean stopped mid-song, raised his glass, and said, "Now the room's safe." The audience laughed. The man smiled. But the subtext was clear. Dean knew exactly who was in the room and how to keep things smooth. Was it a joke? Was it a signal? Was it both? That's what made Dean different. He could navigate those moments without ever showing his hand. He didn't brag. He didn't pretend to be tough. He made them laugh. And that was better than fear. Whether he was connected or not almost didn't matter. What mattered was that people thought he was. Dean didn't need to prove anything. And by staying quiet, he made everyone else fill in the blanks with exactly the story he wanted them to believe. In Hollywood, silence usually means you're hiding something. But for Dean Martin, silence was strategy. While others tried to control their image, Dean let his speak for itself. He didn't correct the rumors. He didn't challenge the press. He didn't go on record to clean up his legacy. And in doing that, he created something more powerful than a denial. He created doubt. Doubt made people curious. It made them speculate. And that speculation gave Dean an edge. In a world where secrets were currency, silence wasn't suspicious. It was smart. Especially when your friends were being watched, when casinos were being raided, and when journalists were desperate for a headline. Dean knew that the second you start defending yourself, the game changes. You look guilty, or worse, scared. But he never flinched. He joked, he smiled, he sang. That's all. Some say he stayed quiet out of fear. Others say it was loyalty to friends, to old values, to the idea that some things just aren't talked about. But maybe, just maybe it was about control, because silence can't be twisted. It can't be misquoted. And when your image is half shadow, half smile, saying nothing might be the only way to stay untouchable. Decades later, the question still lingers. Was Dean Martin really connected to the mob? And the truth is, we don't know. And that's exactly how Dean would have liked it. He died in 1995, never having spoken publicly about the rumors. No tell-all interviews. No late-in-life confessions. Just the same smirk he had when they first asked him in the 60s. And that silence became part of his legend. You look at articles, books, YouTube comment sections, the same stories keep coming back. My grandfather said Dean was protected. I heard a guy say he saw Dean at a table with made men. Everyone knew not to mess with Martin. And maybe they did. Or maybe they just liked believing they did. Dean's legacy is a strange blend of warmth and danger. He was the lovable crooner who made jokes and sang ballads. And yet, no one ever made fun of him the way they did others. There was always that edge, that idea that Dean had people. And maybe that's what he wanted to leave behind. Not just music, not just laughs, but a little bit of mystery. Not everyone needs to be a hero. Not everyone needs to be innocent. Sometimes, just being untouchable is enough. And in the end, Dean Martin gave us one last performance. A life where the biggest role he ever played was the one he never explained. So yeah, Dean Martin built a career on making things look easy. The voice, the smile, the laugh. Everything felt effortless. But maybe the most impressive thing he ever pulled off was keeping the world guessing. He lived in an era when speaking out could cost you everything, when loyalty mattered more than headlines, and when silence, real silence, wasn't emptiness, it was protection. He watched as his friends fought the rumors, denied them, or got caught in the fallout. And he just kept singing. Maybe he stayed quiet out of respect, maybe out of fear, or maybe Dean Martin understood something deeper, that once you speak, you can't unspeak, that a little mystery keeps people watching. He didn't need to be feared. He didn't need to be cleared. He just needed to be remembered. And he is not just for the songs or the suits or the Vegas stage lights, but for the look in his eye when someone asked the wrong question and he smiled like he already knew the answer. If you enjoyed this story and want more hidden truths behind icons and legends, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and keep the conversation going in the comments. Thanks for watching.